It's a new year and a lot to talk about on One Detroit.
As I think about the monumental task that lies ahead.
From Governor Gretchen Whitmer's quick moves in Lansing to how Lieutenant Governor GARLIN GILCHRIST plans to tackle his role. And you'll see how a computer program is better than we are at spotting fake news.
Why would people lie, and what would they lie about?
I'm Christy McDonald. Join me along with Stephen Henderson and Nolan Finley at Great Lakes Coffee in Midtown. One Detroit is coming up.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929. How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television.
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Support also provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and the Bill and Shirlee Fox Fund for Leadership and Public Affairs Programming at Detroit Public TV.
Everybody loves a coffee shop. I mean, I twist my arm to go into one. But what was it like in terms of seeing foot traffic change in Midtown and the people that you're getting coming in and out of here? I assume a cross section.
It's a very interesting mix most of the time. We'll get everything from doctors and nurses getting off from the DMC right across the street. We'll get pre-concert venues from both the DSO and the Majestic Theater, Wayne State students, then there's business meetings, there's first dates. We're such a unique space with having a full bar as well. So it's not only just the coffee shop, it has the full liquor license as well, so we can sell to-go beer and wine, which is such a unique offering for just a coffee shop.
The pumpkin spice? No. Just regular espresso.
Are you guys ready to do this? We got a lot to talk about. Hi, and welcome to One Detroit. Happy New Year. Hope that you're getting back into the swing of things after the holiday. We are, and we are glad you're with us. I'm on my third cup of coffee here at Great Lakes Coffee on Woodward in Midtown, and that's a good thing because we have a lot to talk about on the show this week. New year, new governor, new lawmakers, new action in Lansing. We'll talk about the agenda and the moves already being made, plus a closer look at the fate of Line 5 and Governor Whitmer's role in that. Then Stephen has a conversation with GARLIN GILCHRIST about how he sees his role as Lieutenant Governor. And is a computer better at spotting fake news than we are? The new program coming out of the University of Michigan. That is all coming up for you on One Detroit. But let's start off with our One Detroit contributors, Nolan Finley from the Detroit News, Stephen Henderson from WDET Radio. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Happy
Hey.
2019.
Same to you.
You know, there's nothing really going on. I mean, government shut down, new lawmakers sworn in Congress. But the good news of the year, 696.
Is it open?
Opening back up, yeah.
Do you remember the original opening of 696?
No,
back when we were teenagers?
No, I was not a teenager when that happened. What was the date on that?
Late 80s.
Didn't last long, did it?
You might have been a teenager.
Well, it took forever to cut that ditch across Oakland County, and I remember the big day when it finally opened up, and I was a new driver.
Oh, and did you drive? A new young driver?
Well, no, I was out in the suburbs. I was in the city.
Oh, well, there you go. You didn't need 696. Well, we know there's thousands of people who really do right now, and they are very happy that it's open. We got a lot going on so far. I feel that we've hit the ground running, coming into 2019 a little hot, Nolan.
Yeah, I mean, coming in with the government shutdown, not so unusual in Washington. That's how we do budgeting these days. We wait until we run out of money, and then we reach a crisis point, shut down the government, and a deal gets done.
And it becomes a bad game of
difference
chicken.
this time, yeah, we got a game of chicken instead of negotiations. And so I think we'd be better off if we just actually shut the government down and put some pressure on these guys to do their jobs.
You know, people who are already out of work and waiting
Yes.
are pretty testy about this.
Yeah, and they
3
should
weeks.
be. I mean, they should be, because it's always a little irresponsible to let the government shut down when you're in charge of it. It's especially irresponsible here, where you have a president who could not get a piece of legislation through on its own merits, this wall that he wants to build with Mexico, or between us and Mexico, and instead injects it into a process that's supposed to be about other things. And so the illegitimacy of the policy position of the president here, I think, makes this an especially egregious shutdown.
Well, as the world continues to turn in Washington there, let's bring it a little closer to home to Michigan, where there's already been a lot of action in Lansing and a lot of items, I think, on the to-do agenda for Governor Whitmer, Nolan.
Well, there are. She's been issuing a lot of directives right off the bat. You know, at some point she's going to have to work with the legislature. You can't govern by directives. I think she's made a couple of questionable moves with those. I think this challenge to Line 5, that was a problem that was solved, and probably solved in the best way possible. You got Enbridge building a tunnel under the lake, a safe tunnel, to put this pipeline into and other utility lines into, and they're paying for it. So this was a problem that should have been off the plate. She's going to make it a problem again, because it's at some point we got to figure out, if we're not going to use Line 5, how we're going to get 540,000 barrels of petroleum products from Canada and the Upper Peninsula down here to southern Michigan every day.
Right, but she campaigned extensively that she wanted to see something differently done with Line 5, and she's taking a second.
On the wall.
She's taking a second look at that. So let's go ahead and take a look at what has been developing so far out of Lansing, and then we're going to come back and talk about it. New Year's Day 2019, Lansing, the state capital.
As I think about the monumental task that lies ahead,
Governor Gretchen Whitmer's inaugural address called for fixing the roads and a collaborative spirit with the legislature. No mention of Line 5, but just a day later, she asked incoming Attorney General Dana Nessel to look into it. She wants legal opinions over a new tunnel planned under the Straits of Mackinac. Environmental groups like the National Wildlife Federation reacted positively.
Yes, I think it was a very strong indication that they are very serious about this issue when the first thing that they do on day one of their administration is push through this review.
Line 5, the pipeline moving oil and natural gas liquids under the Straits since the 1950s, owned by Canada-based Enbridge Incorporated, in recent years considered by some an environmental catastrophe waiting to happen. Nessel promised on the campaign trail and to us in an interview that she would fight to shut the line down.
We're very honestly looking at what could quite possibly turn out to be the biggest oil spill in American history. It can be easily prevented if only we act in time.
Can she just shut this thing down?
She could, yes. There are ongoing violations. In fact, those violations were noted in some of the backdoor agreements that were made between Enbridge and Snyder. And those violations could start a clock for the new governor to start a decommissioning process.
Outgoing Governor Rick Snyder worked with Enbridge on an agreement for the new tunnel with the pipeline. And Snyder created a commission to oversee the tunnel, a commission now under legal review with Whitmer and Nessel in charge. Enbridge issued a statement that the company looked forward to working with the new administration.
Now, the members of the legislature, the Republicans anyway, also took note of Governor Whitmer's statements in her inaugural address, where she said she wants to work collaboratively with the legislature.
I am so looking forward to working with you over the next weeks and months and years.
So they kind of turned that around and said that they're hoping that she'll work collaboratively with them on Line 5. So they've sort of set the bar high and laid down the gauntlet a little bit there.
We owe it to the people we serve to cast partisanship aside.
Great Lakes Now's Gary Wilson said Whitmer will have to decide how much time and political capital she wants to spend on Line 5 with other big issues topping her list. The question in Lansing now, what other action might the administration take?
There is the possibility that the Attorney General or potentially even an environmental group could go to a court and ask a judge to issue an injunction against anything going forward on Line 5 until all the legal issues are solved. But lawyers tell me that judges are loath to issue injunctions unless there's a serious imminent threat coming from Line 5. Now that could be debated, but it's unlikely that as it stands right now, Line 5 poses an imminent threat to the point where a judge would issue an injunction. So that's sort of a Hail Mary pass.
Beth Wallace of the National Wildlife Federation questioned the Snyder Tunnel when it was first proposed. Now she's concerned how the legislation was recently rushed through.
They took 3 to 4 years looking at this issue and then decided in the last couple months of their administration to push through something that didn't have legal review, didn't have fiscal review, wasn't supported by the public, wasn't supported by many businesses in the region, by many lawmakers.
But the tunnel has labor support, meaning some traditional Democrats have joined that side of a fight expected to go on for a while.
The same lawyers tell me that there'll be litigation over Line 5, there'll be a winner and a loser. The other side, the losing side, will appeal. So we're going to be talking about Line 5 for some time to come in the future.
The contract states Enbridge must turn off the existing Line 5 by the end of year 2028. That's 10 years away. But there's an exception to that deadline, meaning it could keep running even longer if there are delays building the tunnel that's supposed to replace it. Enbridge spokesperson Ryan Duffy told Great Lakes Now's Gary Wilson that the tunnel agreement contains, quote, a number of required milestones and deadlines. Our goal to complete the entire project is 2024, end quote.
You know, I think something that we can all agree on, though, is that this maybe is not over, that there is going to be a long process to see what happens next year with Line 5.
Yeah, so, I mean, Governor Snyder, former Governor Snyder, thought he fixed this issue, but he fixed it in a way that a lot of environmentalists and advocates are not happy with. And the new governor has as much right as he did to figure out her own solution. She's doing it in a really methodical way. She's asked the Attorney General to reopen this and take a look and figure out what can be done. There's nothing wrong with that. And the solution that the governor came up with was one that still put the lakes at risk. And some people don't believe that we ought to be doing that.
I don't think it puts the lakes at risk. This tunnel's 100 feet below the bed. I know what will put the lakes at risk if we start putting those petroleum products on freighters and on tanker trucks and on rail lines where a spill is much more likely. This line hasn't spilled in its 60-year history.
But I think what people have concerns about is the safety checks that Enbridge has done or has not done and their history and what happened with the Kalamazoo River. It'll be interesting to see now how this all starts to play out. But again, happening in the first really week of her administration. Nolan, what else are you hearing in terms of agenda items now that the new legislature is coming in, where we're going to start to see some testing here?
Well, we haven't really seen her sit down with the legislature. She's tried to put an early stamp on government with these executive directives, executive orders, if you will. Again, as before we get too far into January, she's going to have to sit down with the legislative leaders and decide what are our priorities for this session. What are we going to try to work together on? She said roads. I think they want roads, and I think that's going to be the early focus. I hope it's the early focus.
And what do you think we'll see? What kind of form is that going to take?
You know, I don't know. I mean, there are a number of different proposals that have come from the Republican side that I think she's going to have to decide whether they can be part of a package to fix roads, but she's also going to need Republicans to be open to the idea of revenue, and that's the sticking point. That's been the sticking point for several years, new revenue to dump into the roads. I've said for a while that I think it's such a priority for her, and there's pressure from the public on Republicans to also help deliver. I think they get something done early this year that is more of a solution than we've seen before. I don't know if it's a complete solution, and hopefully that becomes the basis for a relationship between her and the legislature.
This is a terrific time to come up with that solution. With gas price under $2,
low, right.
You could
some kind of tax would be a lot more palatable than in the past.
We're at like 26, 27 cents a gallon on state taxes. Out in Washington State, 50 cents
Yeah.
a gallon.
Right.
We are way low on that. And now is the time you could tag 20 cents on and people wouldn't
Yeah,
notice.
but are you seeing
But you
any
have to
kind?
get-
Are you seeing any kind of sense though from Republicans in the state of Michigan, where you've said this has been a sticking point before, that there is any kind of change when it comes to that thought?
I think asking them for a tax increase is going to be very hard, but I think
I give them
it's
some.
the right thing to do. If you have to give them something. Now, I don't know what that something is. The governor tried to get a few cents on a garbage fee and couldn't get that. So I don't know if you're going to get a tax increase out of this legislature.
All right, so roads, anything else that I should be looking for now in the next couple of weeks?
Auto insurance, I've talked with both the incoming speaker as well as the House Minority Leader. They both mentioned auto insurance as still a priority for them in terms of taking another bite at that apple. They tried at the last minute in the lame duck session to revive that. There you still have the sticking point between the amount of coverage that people get and the other considerations. Lots of people don't want to create a two-tiered system or revisit no fault. I'm not sure that you can come up with a solution at this point without going quite that far.
Yeah, that's a big issue to take a chunk out of this early on.
And you have Dan Gilbert in the mix saying if they don't fix it, he'll fund a ballot proposal.
Which we don't want.
I mean, there's a lot of frustration, a lot of anger on behalf of their constituents over these insurance rates. They're going to have to act. And, this is where you got Democrats fighting Democrats, Republicans fighting Republicans. There's no clear political break here. You got to put together a coalition on this.
All right, speaking of coalitions and really the role of the lieutenant governor, which is to get in there with the legislature and kind of push the governor's agenda forward. You talked to GARLIN GILCHRIST right before he took on his role as lieutenant governor, and you asked him a little bit about how do you see your role and experience, because you haven't had that kind of legislative experience, and how you see yourself moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's one of the early concerns is how he adapts to that role and how the administration chooses to employ him sort of in that role, and whether Whitmer, who has a lot of legislative experience, ends up taking more of a front seat.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at what he had to say about that.
I've had the honor of being able to spend time with my immediate three predecessors, actually. Lieutenant Governor Brian Cowley has been just a tremendous example of what the transfer of power should look like in the United States, and it's been really, really great to benefit from his generosity and his time. Lieutenant Governor Cherry, very similar. I've spent a lot of time with him learning from his wisdom. And also former Lieutenant Governor Dick Postumus as well.
Who's still around
as well. As his Governor's Chief of Staff. So they've been very generous and helping me get ready for this role. And yes, there is a legislative function that is defined in the Constitution, having to be the president of the state Senate. Yeah. So I spent a lot of time ramping up on the machinations of the Senate. I have spoken with, on the phone or in person, nearly every incoming senator. There are 38 of them. Nearly every incoming senator who I'll be working very closely with. Most importantly, in addition to that responsibility, Lieutenant Governor's job is to work with the governor to ensure that we move Michigan forward. And so Governor-elect Whitmer, her experience as a legislator, her experience as a negotiator and as a leader is something that she brings to the office, and I think that's going to make her successful. My experience complements that very well. And so we're going to work together to utilize both of our assets and both of our strengths, whether it's to push forward our legislative agenda or to push forward our agenda beyond the legislature to ensure that people in Michigan understand that their leadership is listening to them, will respond to them, will respect them, and that we're going to move the state forward.
So give me some idea of the things that you and Governor-elect Whitmer are talking about in terms of what that agenda will look like after January 1st.
Yeah, so first it starts with what I talked about in terms of making state government better at listening, better at respecting and responding to people. We think the relationship needs to be reset for a number of people. There are communities in the state like Flint, where the state government, they feel like it has turned its back on them or had failed them in some way. And so our administration is going to make sure to have people feel that they're being listened to. That involves making sure that our government actually looks like a 21st century government, so that there are ways when you have a touch point with the government, whether it's in person, whether it's on your cell phone, whether it's online, that it's a high quality experience. So working with the professionals who work in state government to make that possible, letting them know that we are with them and have their back, that we support and and respect and want to hear and execute on their ideas, because I believe that they have solutions to some of the problems. I want to think about, how do we enable possibility in Michigan and enable imagination? My personal story is one of a kid whose grandma bought him a computer when he was 5 years old, and she opened the door to possibility for me. I want kids across the state to be connected to the internet, connected to technology, and right now that's not true for kids, whether it's in Detroit or whether it's in Munising, and we have to make sure that it's true for people all across the state of Michigan. I'm also a person who is a transit writer, and so ensuring that people have access to high quality public transit where they can get to school, they can get to work, they can get to healthcare services. So these are things that we talked about during the campaign trail that we want to make sure we're making progress on when we're in leadership.
It's going to be interesting to see what kind of role he plays, Nolan, because we've seen in the past, that maybe Lieutenant Governor has had some calming effects, but not really the huge political role that we would usually see.
Well, they can have, but Rick Snyder used Callie sometimes with the legislature, a lot with the legislature, but he also had Dick Posthumus, a very experienced hand in there, working quietly, working behind the scenes, but getting a lot done in terms of a liaison between the governor and the legislature. Whitmer could also find an experienced hand to fill that role, because I don't think GARLIN GILCHRIST will be that effective with the legislature.
What kind of role do you see him taking, and maybe making it different from other lieutenant governors we've seen before?
Well, so his work so far has been really in the realm of voter access, improving voter access, making sure people's rights are respected in the voting process. I think we'll see him come up with something out of the governor's office that's sort of focused on that area. Now, he's going to be careful, because you've got a Secretary of State who also wants to work on that issue and probably claim the credit for it. But I think he will play to his strengths in that role, and they probably need to let him play to his strengths. This is somebody of extraordinary intelligence and real deep experience in those areas. I think you find a way to plug him in someplace that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of passion and energy too. All right, thanks guys. We're going to have to leave it there. Finally, a look at fake news. Yes, I wish we could ban that phrase, but it's here to stay. So how good are we at figuring out what is fake and what is real? Some computer scientists at the University of Michigan think they've come up with a cool program that figures it out for us. Let's head to Ann Arbor.
We record when we deal with reporters. It's called fake news.
The president has his fake news, the New York Times, CNN. Then there's real fake news. Plans in the Upper Peninsula for another Disneyland theme park. The two guys in Canada who landed a giant shrimp.
We're gonna call the aquarium or something, dude.
And the Ohio woman who taught her 65 cats to steal from her neighbors.
We've been seeing how it affects society, the spread of fake news. It can influence people's decisions. And it's also an interesting phenomenon in itself. Why would people lie, and what would they lie about?
In Ann Arbor, University of Michigan researchers Radea Mahalzia and Veronica Perez Rosas are fascinated by liars and the ways to detect them. They're computer scientists, and now they've got a program that can spot fake news.
We collected examples of fake news and real news, and then we fed them to an algorithm that started to learn. It looks at sequences of words, it looks at the structure of sentences, it looks at the types of words, and then we'll determine whether it's likely to be fake or not.
We have here the news headlines and the news content.
A side-by-side test, one story fake, the other real. The researchers found fakers use personal pronouns, less I's or we's, more he's or she's. Here, stories about Roger Federer, one claiming the tennis star's opponent was distracted during a match.
So this, the fake news, has the personal pronouns, so you see he's, like third-person personal pronoun. Also some of the exaggeration, like necessary, or piercing scream, or deaf as well as blind.
The use of punctuation, for instance, we have noticed that fake news had a heavily use of exclamation marks, question marks.
So this is the right one.
They say their algorithm gets it right 75% of the time, compared to real people who catch the fakes at a rate of 70%. But that requires people with a suspicious eye in the first place, and one person's satire can be another one's news. No, there is no breathing tax in California, but online this fake story has 200,000 shares so far.
The fake news are very predominant, mainly on the social networks. For instance, recent surveys haven't identified that there is a big quantity of outgoing links from Facebook or from Twitter that goes directly to fake news websites.
Weeks before the midterm elections, Facebook added a crew of specialists to root out fake stories before they spread. Now, some fakers have been removed, but it's kind of a game of whack-a-mole, where more just take their place.
So there might be more just because there is more news, period. I'm not sure if it's as a fraction of the news, if it's more or less. That I don't know. But because there is more news, even if the fraction was the same as it used to be, we have more fake news just because of that growth.
Maybe you saw this one, where Kid Rock and Ted Nugent raised millions to fight the war on Christmas. It probably won't clear the U of M test, but it's got a big clue here in small print. A little bit of truth on a screen full of fakery.
You know, if only the stealing cat story from Ohio was true. I was counting on that one. Head to our website for all the real news you want to see. Plus, we are on Facebook and Twitter. Next week, we'll be at the North American International Auto Show. The last time it'll be in January. You won't want to miss that one. Thanks so much to the folks at Great Lakes Coffee here in Midtown for having us. We really could hang out here all day. I'm Christy McDonald. We'll see you next week on One Detroit.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929. How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television.
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Support also provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and the Bill and Shirlee Fox Fund for Leadership and Public Affairs Programming at Detroit Public TV.